Alright, we're talking about interval notations. And interval notation talks about starting with an inequality. And the easiest way to set it up, I think, is going from an inequality, set up a number line graph that kind of shows what the inequality would look like on a number line. And then from the number line, write our interval notation, talking about number 1. Here's what the interval notation would look like. Border on the left, border on the right. Do we include the border or not? If we don't include the border, we put a round bracket. If we don't include the border, put a round bracket, put a comma between them. And that's what our interval notation in general would look like. So here is, in general, what we should do. Number 1, start with an inequality, go to a number line graph, and then from the number line graph, go to an interval notation. Ignore set builder notation unless somebody really tells you you have to, but really for our intents and purposes, set builder notation is too mathy. So let's go through a table. This table kind of describes inequalities. We kind of talked about this one here before. We said that if, and I'm not wild about how this graph is, how this table is set up, but sometimes you just copy things from the textbook because they're there. So if our interval was, I'm going to start with this one here, if our interval was a less than x less than b, we would set up our number line. Here would be our number line or number line graph. We'd say that, well, x is greater than a, so here's my a over here. X is less than b, here's my b over here. And x has to be less than b, so therefore I put a soft rounded bracket there. X has to be greater than a, not greater than or equal to, but greater than a, so we put a soft rounded bracket there. Here's our solution, and our interval is a on the border, b on the border, don't include b, don't include a, put a comma between them, and there's our solution. And in fact, I'm sorry, I really apologize. This is the one that I just did. A is less than x is less than b. This is the one I just did, not that one. But the only difference between them is that there is an equal sign right there. There's an equal sign right there. That's the only difference between these two. So therefore, we would start with a less than or equal to x, less than or equal to b. Therefore, we'd start with, I guess the next step would be create our number line. X is greater than or equal to a means that here's our a as our border. X is less than or equal to b means b is our border. So here's my border there, there's my border there, here's all my solution right in here. And because x is greater than or equal to a, we put a square bracket. It's not a great looking square bracket here, so I'll make it a little bit bigger. X is less than or equal to b, so therefore our solution could include b, so therefore we put a square bracket right there. Some people use rounded, like empty circles and filled in circles. I mean, that gets the same idea across, but because we're looking to create an interval notation, we're going to want to use the square brackets and the round brackets. So from here, we create our border, a and b could be equal to a, our solution could be equal to a, so we use a square bracket. Could be equal to b, our solution could be equal to b, so we use a square bracket. Our solution is right in here, so therefore my border is a and b. And do we include a? Yes, put a square bracket. Do we include b? Yes, put a square bracket. And I'm just going to make these square brackets that are kind of small a little bit bigger, and then put a comma between them. And hey, there we're done. There's our interval notation. We're going to try and set up interval notations. And so we could look at all these, you know, the same way. But essentially that's what we do. We would have an inequality that we would come down to and solve for something like this. And then from here, we just set up our graph. From the graph, it's easy to set up our interval notation. So there's another example of kind of a table describing a lot of different situations. In fact, the only, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8 different situations that could come up. And that's what they would look like.